All right, and welcome to Pivot Points. I'm Brian, here with Dennis. We're going to talk a little bit today about cognitive bias. Do you want to start us off with a definition? I know you pulled one up earlier.
Absolutely, and we're going to rely on the always trustworthy Wikipedia for our definition tonight.
Always trustworthy.
Always trustworthy. It actually happens to be very well sourced. So, a cognitive bias refers to the systematic pattern of deviation from norm or rationality in judgment, whereby references about other people and situations may be drawn in an illogical fashion. Individuals create their own, quote, subjective social reality from their perception of the input. An individual's construction of social reality, not the objective input, may dictate their behavior in the social world. Thus, cognitive biases may sometimes lead to perceptual distortion, inaccurate judgment, illogical interpretation, or what is broadly called irrationality.
All right, and that is, it's a good definition. I like it. There are a lot of words. And
yeah, it's a very maybe overly complicated definition for what we're going for, but it gives a rough outline of what a cognitive bias is.
Oh, yeah, well, I assume, the listeners, they're not stupid, so... you want to, I don't know, I'd rather give a more complicated definition than, like, cognitive bias. It's a thing that's bad that people do.
Right,
like,
and that would be the end of the show right there. I mean,
right.
Wrap it up, 2 seconds, we're done.
No. So, something we were kind of discussing earlier, and something I really wanted to touch on in the show was just how difficult it is sometimes to tell the difference between someone who is an expert about a subject and someone who is suffering from cognitive bias, because frankly it's difficult. I mean, if you look at the way someone who really knows a lot about a subject talks and the way someone who's suffering from cognitive bias talks, it's not all that different.
No, I would agree, and we don't want to dive too deeply into this subject, but it does relate a little bit to the Dunning-Kruger effect, where a person that has a very slight understanding of a subject matter will feel far more confident in their understanding of that subject matter, to the point where they're actually as confident or more confident than an actual expert in that subject area.
I know I'm always more confident when I can't fact check myself.
Well, absolutely. So,
no.
Which is always no.
No, oh, come on. But no, it's a real issue because it's something I've kind of run into a lot in my life. So I like to talk to people about their thoughts on subjects, kind of expand my personal viewpoint. And one of the things that I run into a lot is people who are zealots about a subject. They feel really, really strongly about it. Right. And it makes it really difficult to find out how much they actually know about the subject, because cognitive bias really plays in so strongly. I mean, when you're asking them about something in a conversation, in a vocal conversation, it's not the same as in an internet conversation where someone comments and you've got time to go fact check whatever they said.
Right.
You kind of have to have like a general respect for what your conversational partner is saying.
Yeah, absolutely. When you're actually trying to vocalize thoughts and piece them together that way, and you don't have the ability to immediately go and fact check something that somebody's saying, they can sound completely rational in the process and be completely full of crap in reality. And that also, again, really closely relates to that Dunning-Kruger effect.
Right.
What's interesting about it is I'm actually going to point to a couple of Stanford studies that were done on this subject. And the studies effectively went as follows. They would give the students a series of data. Like the first study actually involved suicide notes. And what they asked the students to do was to differentiate between real suicide notes and suicide notes that were generated by the staff at Stanford. Then after they rated the different notes as whether they were real or fake, they were asked, or rather they were given information that said they were rated as being either very accurate or inaccurate. What it turned out, though, was that the accuracy rating was completely made up. So
I kind of see where this is going.
Yes, the accuracy rating was completely made up. And at that point, they were asked to once again rank how well they thought they did on the study.
Right.
And what was very interesting about this study was the students that were told initially that they did well still ranked themselves higher than the students that were told they did poorly. Even though they were told that the information they were given before was completely bogus.
So they just assumed that I guess they assumed that they were right regardless of what they had already been previously told. Like,
well,
they were.
It basically points to once an idea takes root in your brain, it's really, really hard to pry it out again. And in this case, the idea was for those people that were told that they did really well on determining which suicide notes were real and which were fake, the idea that they were good at doing that had taken root. And in reality, it was a totally false idea. And even after they were told it was false, the idea was still there to some degree.
Right. I don't know. The efficacy of that study is totally not even part of our conversation here because regardless, it points to it. I just kind of wonder if that might have not more to do, but it might have partially to do with something else too. Just the idea that people like to think that they did well regardless, which kind of plays into it also. But
it could, but the fact that the people that were told they did poorly rating themselves as doing poorly after they were told that the study, like there wasn't a relate, like they didn't bump up their rankings higher because after they were told it was false. I mean, there was a bit of a bump, but it wasn't the inflated sense of accuracy that was shown with the people who were initially told they were very accurate.
Right. Yeah, I mean, that's hard to refute. And I mean, it definitely does speak to the idea that, once people have an idea in their head, they want to keep it regardless of whether or not it's good for them.
Right. They actually did a second study that kind of eliminated that factor too of like the personal like being right versus being wrong, and it was much more of a third-party subjective type analysis. And I don't want to go into the details of that right now because I don't want to take up the time with it. But the exact same results came up there, where an idea that had been planted and then they were told was false, was falsely constructed, still was apparent when they were when they were surveyed after the fact.
That's just, it's funny because when you talk about it objectively, like you stand back and you talk about it, you're like, holy crap, that's so crazy. Why would they do that? I mean, they literally were told otherwise. And then you get into that situation and you're like, oh no, I did great on that suicide note test. I was the best. They told me so. You fall right into the same trap even though you were talking about it.
Exactly. And what's actually kind of scary to think about is how bad our memory is and how people may even forget the whole aspect of, oh, well, they told me it was fake. Like their memory may not even retain that years down the road. So but that's kind of a different show subject. But
well, that doesn't surprise me at all.
Right.
Well, I mean, and in a way, it kind of plays into this too because if you forget it later, that's an even stronger reaffirmation of that bias. So if you're gonna throw out the things that don't feel good to what you're going for, like they don't match up with what you want, then you're going to have an even stronger opinion when you come down the road. Like, absolutely.
I
don't remember them telling me no. Like,
well, and they've done studies that show that there's an actual endorphin rush from reading information that agrees with your preconceptions. So, yeah, you're absolutely right. You're going to get that rush from feeling like you were right. And your brain's not even going to want to hold on to that information where they said, oh, well, we were just lying to you. You actually weren't that accurate. We just made that whole thing up. Now, I'm not saying that every student that went through that will do that, but that is often how it works. We do discard that information that we don't want to, that causes us that mental discomfort.
My knee jerk is that I want to be like, no, I don't do that. That's dumb. But then I realize that, like, if I go and read a story about, like, Trump being an idiot again, I'm like, oh, man, there he is. He's doing it again,
Right. And I do this. I do the same thing. I mean, when I come across information on my Facebook feed and I see, that it's confirming a preconception that I already had, I'm happy. You know, I mean, I may not be happy with the content of it, but I get that little bit of an endorphin rush. And when I come across information that disagrees with something that I believe, I'm immediately skeptical. I'm immediately
the knee jerk is go fact check it.
Right.
It can't be right.
Right. I'm digging around. It took a long time for me to get in the habit of fact checking information that agreed with me. I mean, there's so many memes and Facebook posts that fly around now where there's just garbage information in them. And it took me a long time. I think it's my desire to not promote garbage information, and as much as I ask my friends to correct me when I do put out information that's wrong, but I hate it when I do it. I don't hate that they correct me. I hate that I had to be corrected. So I think that just superseded the cognitive bias, and that I decided to go and fact check this information more often.
You know, that's funny because I know that before we talked about some ways to combat cognitive bias, which I think is a good place to go next, but I think you inadvertently stumbled into a way that individuals can combat their own cognitive bias, maybe not in others, and that is make sure that the people around you are looking after you.
Right, absolutely. I mean, ask people to fact check you. I mean, or ask people to tell you if you're wrong. Too often people decide that they don't want to rock the boat with a friend, or they don't want to come off as though they're insulting a friend. And there are people out there who react very poorly to being corrected publicly.
Oh yeah, don't correct me ever. Like you
Brian has literally unfriended and put out assassin hits on people who have corrected him on Facebook.
I feel like that's not a good thing to put out there, because then what if somebody who corrected me dies? Now there's a whole investigation. Like, that's not what I want. They'll find out I actually did do it, and then I go to jail. It's just such a pain in the ass. Come on, man.
But no, I do agree with you. I think that's actually, self-checking or checking your own bias is an important start to combating cognitive bias elsewhere, because we all have it. We all have it. Right. And understanding that reality is the first step to being able to combat it in yourself, and then being able to combat it in others.
And to that point, I know you did some research on how to combat it in others, so let it fly.
All right. Well, the first somewhat effective method, it relates directly to what we were just talking about, which is examining your own beliefs. When you examine your own beliefs in a critical manner, you are far more likely to be at least somewhat objective. If you're not examining your own beliefs in a critical manner, or at least trying to, the chances are you're just not going to be objective about the situation. You're going to just look at information that disagrees with you and discount it without even thinking about it, because you're not willing to critically examine your own beliefs. So getting to that point where you're truly willing to critically examine your own beliefs. And that means that if you have a belief and you start coming across information, and more information that disagrees with it, that it's coming from valid sources, from reputable sources, then you have to be willing to change your opinion on that.
That's tough. I mean,
and it's tough to do. It's very tough to do.
No, well, I mean, you walk in and you're walking into something that is literally been shown to cause you personal grief. Like, that's what we were speaking to earlier. You have a physical, visceral reaction to being proven wrong. Right. So you're essentially making the determination, like, I am going to make myself miserable for the sake of other people feeling better about themselves, and maybe science or whatever.
Right.
But
like I said, I mean, for me personally, it was focusing more on my dislike for promoting false information, and for having other people find out that I promoted false information. I focused on that, I guess you could call it, very selfish aspect of it, and use that as kind of a pry bar against my own personal cognitive biases.
That's almost better in a way, because, like, I hate to say this, and I don't mean it in such a negative way, but the selfish things are a better motivator. I mean, people don't go on a diet to make themselves better looking for other people necessarily. They do it so they feel better about themselves. They feel
Right.
better about the way people are looking
Right.
at them or whatever
Right.
else.
They're not doing it so that other people have a more pleasing appearance in front of them of somebody.
Right,
They're doing
right.
it because they want.
I
There's
just want
going
your
to be health
painting to look
motivators.
nicer,
Right.
man. That's just
Right.
I know you're painting this area, and I just really want it to look nice. So.
Right, right. But so that brings us to the first way of how do you get other people to change their to address their cognitive biases, to potentially change their mind on an issue that they are completely wrong on, and you can
Is it throat
show
punching?
it. It is not throat punching.
Okay.
It's unfortunately not a valid option. You
What?
just love throat punching, don't you?
I do. I'm a big fan. I really am.
What it boils down to, though, is if you could talk to somebody directly, online doesn't work as well because
Right.
when you're talking to somebody on the internet, they may not even be putting out their own ideas. They may just be copying and pasting internet links and throwing them on the chat message or in the chat box or in the message box and putting that out there without ever actually examining their own beliefs in the process. And it just becomes an exchange of internet links that nobody actually reads, and everybody walks away thinking they won.
Right, when they're all of a sudden using punctuation when they hadn't for the past, however long you've been debating. You've been debating 15 minutes, and all of a sudden they're using full sentences and punctuation. You're like, wait
Right,
a fucking
right.
minute. Like, what the hell's going on here?
It's like, yeah, there's a demarcation line there where they've gone from typing their own thoughts to just copying thoughts from articles and then sharing the article.
Are you using hashtags in our conversation? No.
But a good way to do this in person is to get them to examine their own beliefs critically. If you can get them to try and talk about their beliefs, you don't even have to go at it from a perspective of, well, let's see where you're wrong. Just get them to talk about their beliefs. Ask them direct questions about them. Get them to explain their beliefs in detail. Not just what they believe, but why they believe it. Ask them from the top of their head without trying to go off and pull out information from other places where they get that belief from, why they have that belief.
Can you put it in a musical format?
Make him have a rap out of it, No.
Right? No. Turn the chair around. Let's rap for a minute.
But no, if you could get them to do that self-examination, and in the process they begin to realize, well, maybe my reasoning for having this belief isn't as solid as I thought.
Right.
Maybe I don't know about this topic as much, or maybe I don't know as much about this topic as I originally thought. If you can get that to happen, you now have a window of opportunity. The second method that I've come across that seems to work effectively is I kind of refer to it as the building a bridge method. I think I actually came across that in the article.
Right.
But it basically deals with, you look at a person's belief, find an aspect of it that's accurate. If you could find an aspect in a person's belief that's accurate, that has a basis in reality, lead with that. Tell them, okay, I agree with you on this. I think you're right about this.
Right.
And that will immediately trigger in their minds that endorphin rush. They
Right.
like that. You've just built something of a bridge of communication with them. Now try to pivot on that to where you're examining it from a different perspective. Try to get them to make that pivot.
Try to pick something topic related, not be like, oh, I noticed earlier that you said that pink starbursts were good.
Right.
Now let's talk about GMOs.
Right.
Like,
exactly,
know.
exactly. It's got to be topical.
No.
But, yes. But if you could get them to make that perspective shift on their own, get them to look at it from a different perspective,
Right.
and then also start to plant the seeds of maybe developing some of these other ideas in that perspective. Once they make that shift, and if they can generate some of those ideas on their own, maybe with you leading them a little bit, they'll be far more likely to pay attention to what you have to say after that. If it feels like it's an idea that they're coming up with, they're more likely to support it or be willing to support it versus if it's an idea that you're just flat out telling them. So
Right.
you've got to kind of lead them to construct the idea on their own.
And now that we've talked about the optimism and the planting the seeds, let's talk about the thing that sets the field on fire. And that is the backfire effect, which I think we've discussed a little bit personally, but we haven't really touched on yet. So did you want to go over a little bit what the backfire effect is?
Absolutely. The backfire effect is completely irrational.
And exciting. I'm just gonna
and exciting. And it's
I'm being the hype man for this for everybody who's listening. I'm excited about the backfire effect because it's fucking weird.
It's totally counterintuitive. It makes absolutely no sense. You would think that if you were provided with information that ran contradictory to your beliefs, that on a rational, from a rational examination of the evidence, you would adjust your beliefs accordingly. Now, as we discussed with cognitive bias, we don't like to process information that disagrees with us. But the backfire effect goes a step further. Not only will we not process that information, we will dig our heels in even further and feel more confident in our position, which makes no sense.
Yeah, well, I think that's how you get to the point of, like, GMOs don't hurt anybody. And, like, well, that's because Monsanto... Monsanto told you that, and obviously, that makes them even more dangerous and powerful if they can convince you.
Right. GMOs cause cancer. Well, here's a list of all these different studies that show that's nonsense. I believe it even more now. That doesn't make any sense. Fuck
it's
you.
Because Monsanto ordered those studies, and that's how...
Right. They will come up with... Well, that's where the conspiracy theory comes in.
Right.
And, this is where we the most often see it. There's other aspects of play into conspiracy theories. Than just
like
the
aliens.
Effect. Right,
aliens play into conspiracy theories.
Let's not forget the cloud people.
The cloud people. Aliens and cloud people working together with the lizard men in the hollow earth.
But it's a sad reality that if you want to try and change somebody else's mind, just going at them with facts is not going to work. It's just not.
That's the most depressing and disappointing thing I've ever heard, though. Like, if you have a well-rationed argument and you come at them with that, like, you just don't do that. That's not going to work. Like, you're
right. But no, it does boil down to what we talked about earlier. What are the effective ways of dealing with it? One of the things you noticed when I was going through those effective ways, giving people facts was not one of the effective ways.
Don't do that. Don't give them well-reasoned arguments because that just people hate that.
No,
they hate that.
There is a time and a place to put the facts in there. Once you've already got them questioning their reality or questioning their perception, now you can hit them with some facts that might take root. But you got to
maybe like leave the facts in the corner of the room for them to find themselves. Don't just like hit them with the facts. Just like like slip it under their donut, and maybe they'll find it after they're done having breakfast. Like
and you've got that endorphin rush from the donut. It works great.
Oh yeah. Oh, absolutely.
So yeah, it's unfortunate, but that's how it is. People hate facts when they're flung against them, even if they're accurate.
It's almost like I hate to say it because I know this makes me a bad person, but I'm okay with being a bad person.
Well, this is not the only thing that makes you a bad person.
Yeah, it's not the only thing that makes me a bad person. My assassination attempts against people who've proven me wrong.
Right. I mean, I've had to deal with 4 now.
Yeah, at least. I mean,
those are the one I know of. I mean,
but probably one from this conversation. Even who knows? Like we'll have to see how I feel after I get some sleep. But it's so crazy that like almost like a train wreck. Like I can't look away from the idea of like people rebelling against common sense so hard that they're willing to like straight up burn the whole fucking field and be like, forget it, I don't want any of this, I'm just gonna go with my what I had already decided before I even got here. Fuck it. Like it's crazy. And it just,
but we see it all the time. I mean, again, this underscores why trying to argue with people on the internet 99.99999% of the time is ineffective.
Well, you see it kind of, but the problem with that is you don't observe both sides. You don't observe what the other person's taking away from it. So you can say, for example, you can think that you like straight up changed their mind. Like you can be like, God, I delivered so much knowledge there, and I'm the best, and then you walk away with like a huge head and like can't even get out
Right.
the door, and they're sitting there like he sounded like a total fucking idiot.
Right. Well, I mean, sometimes, but I mean, if you see an exchange, you go on there, you see somebody post that, we've been hitting on GMOs a lot. Let's say you see somebody post that, climate change isn't real, and then you immediately fling on there, well, here's all this stuff from Skeptical Science and everything. You throw some Skeptical Science links up there, which is a great website for climate change, by the way. You throw those on there, and then if you just walk away, you could be like, it showed them, but the person probably responds to, oh, well, this is just, they're part of the conspiracy. Or
they
this is
change your
fake
name
news.
to Lizard Person in the chat, and they're done.
Exactly. Ban you from the group so you can never respond again. And,
Right, and now your name's
you're
Lizard
done.
Person forever, and you can't
Right.
change it.
Right.
And then you have to get surgery to become a lizard person. no.
As mandated by the Trump administration.
Oh gosh, did they already get that through?
They did
Executive order.
Executive order, yeah. And on that note, I think we should start wrapping things up. Is there anything else you wanted to add, Brian?
No, I think that's just about it.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone, for listening.
We're going to put some links in the description to some relevant content, and please like the video if you enjoyed this. Subscribe to the channel if you want to see what we got coming up in the future. We got a lot of big plans, and comment below. Let us know what you think.
Yeah,
I mean,
tell your
that's
friends, tell your family,
Yeah.
let's spread the word.
We really do. We need feedback from you guys to help us perfect this. It's what's really going to make this interesting.
Absolutely. All right. Well, good night, everyone.
Good night.